In terms of actively encouraging attendance, so I find that a lot of things recently, a lot of problems I've been facing with some clients I've had is that patients are, for whatever reason, not turning up. And one of the main things you can do to sort of push them into attending, aside from reminding them about the appointment more effectively, is to actually incentivize them in the first place. So by using an online deposit system or a payment system, whether that's for prepayments or whether that's whether that's they make a booking and then that's subject to you actually calling them or whatever you want to do. But the way that we do it essentially is online prepayments as part of the online booking process. And there's a number of reasons why I would say it was a good thing to do. There are lots of obviously positives and negatives attached to it, but on the balance, it's usually a positive thing. And the first thing is, of course, that especially if you're a smaller practice and you're hiring a room even, you've obviously got a lot of overheads to cover in terms of room rental. You might have, if it's your own practice, you obviously got utility bills, staff costs, all the rest of it. So what a prepayment does essentially is gives you that opportunity to weed out those people who aren't serious enough about the appointment and are a likely no-show risk. And of course, then on top of that, it allows you to cover those overheads if necessary. And what I would say is you don't necessarily have to go all out and say you must pay fully up in front. It can be just, proportional to how much they really ought to pay in terms of covering overheads and making sure that you get most of the cost actually covered. So if you look at the cost of providing a service, whether you're hiring a practitioner, if you're a manager, or whether you're the practitioner themselves, and you can actually make sure that you can cover their cost even if the patient doesn't turn up. In terms of payments in general, now I come from a clinical background as well, and the one thing that would really get to me is that you don't want to be treating someone and then holding out your hand for payment, essentially. You want to try to separate that transactional aspect of your relationship from the doctor-patient relation aspect, because you really want to make sure the doctor-patient relationship is as secure as possible, especially in mental health, where so much relies on that rapport that you have between yourself and the person needing your help. And online payment is one of the easiest ways to do that. Whether through prepayments or whether through an online payment portal in general, even if it's post fact, either way is much better than not doing it at all. And one of the things I wanted to mention as well, that is when you do this through Medesk, we actually generate the relevant financial documentation as you go along. So someone's paid, the invoice is put together automatically. Our payment provider actually sends out a receipt anyway, and then you can actually use whatever other headed documents you need on your side from within Medesk itself. So it just sort of cuts out some of those paperwork issues as well, because the last thing you want to do is fudging around with paperwork when you could be actually doing more clinical work. And if you can do it to an extent that you don't need to hire a PA or a receptionist, that's even better. Peter says it's a very good idea to charge a fee reflecting one's overheads. Yes, thank you very much. I think it's a good idea too. Even if it's just so you can break even and not lose out, because if you get a couple of people not turning up on one day, that could actually push you back into the red quite easily. So it's definitely worth considering. And one of the other reasons I think that charging some degree of prepayment, doesn't have to be a lot, by the way, just some amount, is because a weird quirk of human psychology is that if you get something for free, you tend not to value it, because you think, well, it's free, right? So it can't be worth anything. And now this is true of healthcare as well as it is true of anything else. And you only have to look, a bit cynical, but you only have to look at how many people go to a GP when they don't really need to go. And because it's the NHS, it's free at the point of service anyway, free at the point of use. And they go there, but they probably wouldn't go there and actually use that appointment up if it costs something, because they'd actually realize it has value and it's not something they're willing to do. And so that's one thing you can do, and actually it may increase your chance of booking when a patient's considering, may increase the chance of booking, and also, of course, it weeds out those people who are less serious as well, or less need your help, even. And so the way that Medesk works essentially is that as part of the online booking process, you can stick in a payment option there, but also you can have a patient portal, and then the patient can actually pay through that portal instead. So they essentially log in with their phone number and a one-time password, and that will then link up with their patient record. They can't see any patient record information there, unfortunately, yet, but there's an appointment history, and you can make a payment there as well, and you'll get a receipt for that. And that's pretty much what this slide covers, actually. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, I think. And so the other thing is, what Peter asked about originally, actually, was, how do you stop people booking when they're not really the people you want to see? Now, this is a question of pre-screening, really, because the last thing you want to do is spend all day looking at people that you have to basically turn away, because it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, both yours and the patient's. And so pre-screening is key. And I've got an example here that is not just for the purpose of screening out the people you don't want, but also the people who shouldn't really be attending for health reasons, which we'll get onto in a minute. So how many of you are currently doing any degree of pre-screening? And if you are, how are you doing it? Is it phone calls from the receptionist with a questionnaire? Are you doing it yourself? How does it work? Let's give you a couple of seconds to respond if you'd like. Okay, so Andrew says he's going to be doing a pre-screen personally. Okay, and is there any particular reason why you'd want to do that yourself, rather than use a sort of pre-prepared questionnaire or getting someone else to do it? Is there any particular reason? I asked because it might be a very valid reason I can also talk about. Andrew, unfortunately, I cannot see or hear you. No, unfortunately, the video and so on is only my end, unfortunately. So Peter says, I'll only accept professional referrals by GP, lawyer or consultant with whom I can discuss the perception the patient needs. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, in your case, what I would say is use a unique link for each of those people, and just don't have any other means of people coming in from different channels. If social media, for example, is something you don't want to work with, or maybe Google ads and that sort of thing you don't want to work with, fair enough. But you still would probably want to check how many people are coming in through different referral partners. It's still very well worth doing it that way. And you'll have then at least a standardized way of accepting the referrals as well, in an automated manner that you don't have to constantly monitor. Andrew says that he's going to be doing a pre-screen personally because he wants to know with whom he's going to be working and whether they fit together. So Andrew, is that on more of a sort of personal level, whether you and the patient are sort of compatible enough that the therapy would be, promoted by that rather than hindered by it? Is that what you meant? Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I totally understand that from that perspective, especially if you're just starting out and you've got the time and energy to do that. That's definitely fair enough. And as I've said, and as you all know, much of mental health success does depend heavily on the doctor-patient relationship anyway. So it does make sense to do that. The problem you might find is when you get so busy that you can no longer really do that. What you would end up doing then is some of the clients I work with, I spoke to one of them in particular I've got in mind earlier today, and what they do essentially is they allow bookings and just allow them to go through, but what they only allow through the online booking system is actually the free of charge initial discovery call. And that's sort of 15-20 minutes where they get to know the person, get to know what their needs are, and then from there they decide whether it's appropriate to let them book. And they would give them a different link that would then allow them to book again, or they would just book them in there and then over the phone, depending on what's more appropriate. So there's definitely ways around it, and yeah, it's fair enough. In terms of whether you get that busy or not, well, hopefully you will. You never know. Things can sort of shoot off at a credible rate when you do things right. And I see that you're going to be using Zoom. Now, that's all well and good, Although going back to the issue of data security, I wouldn't say that Zoom is actually that secure. You probably remember being in the press, there were quite a lot of instances where even the government was sort of, people have dropped into their Zoom calls and all sorts of stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend using anything that isn't already within a secure system. But yeah, I mean, it's perfectly adequate. I mean, if those concerns aren't too high for you, but yeah, I mean, what I'm going to show you in a minute will probably be more appropriate if those are a big concern for you. Looking to do, well, Zoom has improved, yeah, but it's still not specially designed for healthcare, is it? It's not what it's for, and they don't have anything in their privacy agreements that say they can't share your data either, by the way. Yeah, Microsoft Teams. Well, I can't say I enjoy Microsoft Teams very much. So yeah, Peter says, if you're good, you'll be inundated. Yeah, it's true. I mean, especially with the coronavirus situation right now, a lot of people who previously didn't have mental health conditions certainly now do. They certainly want to see someone about it anyway. And of course, people who do have mental health conditions, the situation in the country is obviously exacerbating that. So yeah, you'll be very surprised. Peter's quite right. You'll be very surprised at how much interest you get. Some of the clients I've got are fully booked. I mean, I'm speaking like completely rammed until like May next year. So it's, yeah, you'd be surprised. We release new videos every week. Hit that subscribe button to learn how to grow your practice faster.